That's better. Okay, can you see me? The camera's so far away to fit all of this nonsense in frame. But here we are. So, you might be a bit like me and have a mountain of things you've got on Vinted. This is my picture at the minute, and if you think this isn't too bad, there are 2 boxes under here, all full. Hi everyone, and welcome back. Today I want to talk about what happens when your mountain of decluttered clothes hasn't sold. If you're new here, hi, I'm Charlotte. I make videos about decluttering, minimalism, making and saving money, and all sorts of other stuff really. And one of the key themes on my channel over the years has been about decluttering and then responsibly getting rid of the things you decluttered. I am a former maximalist and shopaholic whose style has changed about 4 million times over the last 10 years, and as a result of that there has been a lot of decluttering, and the biggest area for that is in clothing. When I first started out on my minimalism journey back in 2020, I did a wardrobe declutter as just a starting point. I decluttered over 150 items of clothing, and some of those still exist in this pile today. My most used method for getting rid of clothes responsibly, and when I say responsibly I simply mean not throwing them in the trash, so to get more use out of them so someone else gets more use out of them, has either been donating them to charity shops or selling them through Vinted. I found Vinted to be the most useful of all the selling platforms, but I guess some of what I'm saying here could be applied to other selling platforms that specifically relate more to clothing than, let's say, to other things. I've made quite a few videos about how to successfully sell on Vinted, but I think if we're being transparent here, a lot of us that have a lot of decluttered stuff to get sold on Vinted will typically fall into the same pattern. So if you want to do well on Vinted, there is a good strategy for it, and I have made a video about it before, but the short version is structured, repetitive uploads. Not uploading everything once, uploading 2 to 3 pieces every day or every other day to keep the momentum coming to your page. And when you're doing that, you will typically have a block of time for as long as you're doing that where you'll consistently be selling items. And I've done the same. But what happens when you've kind of hit your saturation point? You've listed everything slowly, and for me this has been over a number of years, and granted, you've sold a lot of stuff as well. I've sold over 250 items on my Vinted. I got that little notification to tell me the other day. But then you're still left with so much stuff. When do you decide to try a different strategy or call it quits altogether? My background on this is I went through a period a few years ago of financial difficulty. And I think if you go through a period like that in your life, or if you're in it now, or if just typically the cost of living feels like such a strain for you that you can't afford to be wasteful and that you need to get something back from your items, then it can turn you into a bit of a decluttered item hoarder. And that's what I've been in the past. Prior to that, I used to donate all of my clothes, because when I was financially comfortable, and this is going to sound bad, but when I was financially comfortable, I couldn't be bothered. I couldn't be bothered to do all the Vinted, all the photos, the uploading, the descriptions, the posting it and all of that. And it's easy to fall into that habit when you are financially comfortable. And so I just donated everything. And I thought, you know what, it's going to a good cause. And so there's nothing wrong with that. If you're donating it and it's good quality pieces that someone can sell on for a charity, great. But then when you fall on hard times financially, which I did, I had this really deep feeling of regret, thinking, well, if I'd have put the time in and sold all those things, I could have made money from that, which would be useful to me in the present. And that sort of regret is very real, and that can lead to this sort of situation. Whereas now, where I'm a little bit more stable, where I now think, well, what if I fall on hard times again? Will I regret just getting rid of all of this stuff and donating it because it could have made me a bit of money? But I think on reflection, we need to think about the truth of that and where we actually are. Because are people buying these items? No. Are they priced very low? Yes. We've got good photos and good descriptions, yet the vast majority of my items are on Vinted for £1 or £2. And I think we all need a little bit of a truth here, is that, you know, whilst we're all very consistently active on Vinted, things like that will continue to sell. Not all of them, but things will. An item here and there will. But when you take into account the Vinted protection fees and the postage, your item that you list for £1 or £2 ends up costing the buyer anything from about £4 to £6, which for an item that you yourself have only valued at about £1, people are going to be less inclined to buy it unless it's something pretty unique that they can't find anywhere else. And maybe you're better off going down a different strategy, and this will probably be better when the weather warms up a bit, of car booting. Taking an entire rail of your Vinted clothing, saying it's £1 an item, or even bulking them together and say get 7 items for a £5 or something like that, you're probably more likely to shift it. So I think coming to terms with a bit of a reality about your low ticket items is probably needed in this situation. For me, I've very much reached the point where I don't want to keep storing this any longer. Some of this has been on Vinted for years, and I still have over 100 items on my Vinted. I have turned it off over the festive period to give myself a bit of a break from randomly having to go down to the little lockers. But I think at some point I've just got to accept that some of this, despite the fact that most of it is really good quality, it's probably just not going to sell. It might not be what people are looking for. People don't want to spend £4 or more on an item I valued myself to be £1. And I've reached the point now where I want my space back. All of this stuff is being stored in 2 closets in my house, and I'm kind of over that. And so I'm going to share with you today just a little strategy that I've got. The first is I'm going to go through it all. As I've said, I've turned off my Vinted for the time being. I'm going to go through all of this, and anything that I've got listed as £1 or £2, I'm going to donate. I think I've reached the point now. I personally don't want to go and do a car boot. I've done loads of them in my time. I don't want to do another one, and so I think I'm just going to accept for myself that I will donate those items. But if you're going to follow this strategy similarly to how I'm going to do it, you could set aside some of your items on Vinted that you would sell at a car boot. If you don't want to donate them, if you think there's still some benefit in having that money for yourself, make a pile and have that as your car boot pile. Take a rail and put all of those items, as I said, listed for £1, or do like a bundle offer or something, because you're more likely to get the money for it then than through Vinted. You've also got to think, with Vinted, people have to trust you. I've always worked really hard to get my Vinted profile solid with good reviews, but people have got to trust you. So if they're going to part with their money, they need to trust that what you're listing is actually accurate, which they can't physically see for themselves like they can if you car boot something. And then they've got to trust that it's the right size. I mean, I know you can't really try some things on at a car boot unless it's like a jacket or something, or a top that you can put over, but at least they can physically hold it up to them, sort of approximate the size. So I think for your £1 and £2 items, Vinted might not be the best place for them anymore. So set aside either whether you're going to donate them or use some sort of in-person way of selling them. Depending on where you live in the world, it might be quite common to do like a garage sale. You could do that, or like I said, you could car boot. For me, I'm going to be donating them. As I'm going through them, even the £1 and £2 items, see if there's anything I can repurpose. Because when I've been going through my Vinted phases, if you like, I'm not thinking about can I use that again around my house, except for like vest tops and stuff. I stopped listing that sort of thing, even in like bundles, and I rip them up for rags. Things like old leggings, vest tops, I rip them up for rags to use around the house. And so they've already been taken out and repurposed, but I'm going to see if there's anything else that can be repurposed for other things. And I've already said my style has changed a lot over the last few years. I mean, this is Charlotte from a time gone by. But my style has changed so much. I would not be surprised if there's stuff in here that I've forgotten about that may have even come full circle. Some of the things that at the time I was like, oh no, I won't wear that again, that potentially I might. Now, I'm not saying there's a lot. I would probably say maybe 1 or 2 items if I'm lucky. There might be 0, but it's worth going through and seeing if there is anything that I could potentially wear in future. There's also the aspect of when my size has changed has been the reason to declutter it. Admittedly, at the minute I'm a bit up and down with my size, so I decluttered a lot of this because it was too big for me. There might be some of it that actually I've come back into and might fit. After that, when I'm sure that I've taken out all the sort of £1 and £2 items and there's nothing else I want to keep, then I'm going to see what else I've got left over. If there's any sort of higher ticket items, things that I'd probably put on for £10 or more, think designer labels and things new with tags that are those sort of better brands, then I might put in a bit of effort into relisting those, and then I will re-upload those as a fresh listing to start getting more traction. But the thing that makes me not want to do that as a general rule is I don't want to do that for over 100 items. I don't have the time to take them all off and put them all on again. I don't think it's worth it anymore for those £1 and £2 items when there are other ways to try and sell them, or if you're comfortable you could just donate them. So that's my strategy. So feel free to stay with me, feel free to get sort of a bag of your own stuff and you can do it at the same time. So I'm going to start by separating it into piles and we'll see what we've got and then I'll talk you through it. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but this was the t-shirt I wore in the second ever video I filmed for my channel back in 2020. That's so cute. I mean, I wouldn't wear it now, but it's cute. Okie dokie, so this, I've filled the bag again and then some, and this will be my donate pile. But just a reminder, if you are in a position where you feel like you can't donate, where you do actually need to use your decluttered items as a source of income, then just a reminder that some of those lower priced items, they're probably better going to something like a car boot sale where you are more likely to sell them because people can see them, touch them, sort of size them up if you like, and they also don't have that extra cost of all the fees and postage, so do keep that in mind. This little pile here is all of the stuff that is the sort of material that I can repurpose into rags or other things. So I've got plans to keep at home, these items to repurpose. Then this very small pile, bless you, didn't know guinea pigs could sneeze. Then this very small pile is the stuff that is either sort of designer label that I want to re-put on Vinted. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. I've got a bag and a watch here, so 7, and I've actually got a bridesmaid's dress in here, so 8. So there will only be 8 items left on my Vinted by the time I'm done here, and it's going to be a big job to delete all those items that I don't want, but once it's done, it's done. So the items I still have for Vinted until I sort them out will go into this box here, and then again I'm just going to bide my time. I will put on there reasonable prices, and I suppose if the end result is I'll end up donating them, I'll just sort of over the course of the time they're on there bring the prices down until I find their selling point. If not, I'll just eventually declutter those as well. I don't think you can see it, but I've also got one dress actually that I wanted to relist that I've forgotten about. So that makes it, what, 9 items? And then as well as a few dresses up here, I have actually more than I thought. This pile of bits that I want to try on again, and if they don't fit they will all go in the donate pile, or if they're not my style or if I don't think I'll have the use for them, then they will go as well. But I mean, there's things I've kept, like I've kept these leggings because I know I'm planning on doing a bit of DIY, so I'm actually keeping these for the purpose of I know they're going to get scruffy, I know they're going to get paint on them, but better than getting it on my other clothes. There were a pair of old trainers that I was going to keep for like gardening trainers, but they're quite nice. They're just not my style anymore. They're kind of glittery and rainbowy. And I thought if I wear those out in the garden, they're going to get trashed, which, you know, likewise these are, but these are just a pair of leggings. And I thought actually that pair of trainers someone might buy in a charity shop and then the charity can have the money for them. It was almost like they were too nice to destroy. So, you know, with things like that, I guess there's a line here and there and you kind of just have to weigh it up to what you think is best. But if anything, I hope this has just given you a bit of reassurance that Vinted isn't just a big answer to all our sort of decluttering problems. It does work really well, and if you apply a solid strategy at the start, like I suggest in my other video, you can shift a lot of stuff and you can make a fair bit of money. Like I said, I've sold over 250 of my decluttered items. You know, it does work, but at some point you might reach a time where the lower price stuff, the £1, £2 stuff just isn't selling. You want your space back, you're trying to come up with the best system, and my strategy would be this. Go through it all, divide it up. If you can donate it, do. If you want another selling alternative for those low price items that just aren't going to sell with the postage and the Vinted fees, as well as factoring in that people need to trust you, that they're going to get a positive experience. They want to be able to see the item and inspect it for faults and all of that. Something like a car boot or a garage sale might be your next best bet. And then of course there's repurposing items around your house. It might feel a bit wasteful to sort of tear things up and make rags that will eventually get trashed, but if it saves you buying cloths and rags, then you're sort of solving a different problem. And then yes, by all means, do have another look through, another try on, and maybe you'll find one or two little gems that you can bring back around. I'm not promising anything with that one though. I usually do say you will have decluttered it for a reason. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe to my channel. We're very light-hearted over here. We're just trying to make the best of life, and so feel free to subscribe and follow along for more. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in another video very soon. Until next time, God bless. Take care.